The huntsmen view it as their traditional and rightful quarry. To the hunting fraternity, the fox is known as Charlie, after the celebrated politician Charles James Fox. But others see the fox as one of our graceful and attractive native animals. Whatever our view on foxes, one can't help but admire their cunning. Hunted foxes will resort to a variety of tricks in order to outwit their pursuers. They've been known to cross roads and railways, swim rivers, and even climb trees, all ways of masking that telltale scent the hounds are following. Without any doubt, the fox is one of the most quick-witted animals around. In Britain, the red fox, to give it its full name, is very widespread. Its most typical habitat is a mixture of fields and hedgerows, providing plenty of shelter and food, but it's quite at home in almost any type of country, from open moorland to dense forestry. Although the fox is a very familiar animal, much of its behavior is shrouded in fable and myth. It's often thought foxes are ruthless hunters and that they kill far more than they eat. Although exceptions occur, such as when a fox gets into a chicken house, this isn't normally so. The fox is a carnivore. Small mammals and birds form a major part of its diet, but it will also eat insects and vegetable matter. This one has caught a thrush. A fox often buries its food, particularly when prey is in good supply. It uses its muzzle to heap earth and leaves over its kill. Later, when it's hungry, it will return, using its strong sense of smell to find its hidden food. Though the fox is certainly intelligent, some stories exaggerate its cunning. One fable tells how a fox will remove its fleas by backing into a river while holding a stick in its mouth. When the fleas have congregated on the twig, the fox lets go. Foxes do carry fleas, and they can certainly swim, but the rest of this tale has no foundation. They're also regarded as wanton killers of domestic livestock, especially poultry and lambs. Though both are taken on occasions, the incidence is far lower than is usually imagined. Recently, the fox has been blamed for a more sinister crime. In Europe, it's one of the chief transmitters of the terrible disease rabies. Britain has been free of rabies for over 60 years, and every effort is being made to keep it that way by enforcing strict quarantine laws on all animals imported into the country. But if rabies does ever reach Britain again, the fox would undoubtedly become one of the principal carriers. Despite its skills and cunning, the fox often has to work hard to obtain a meal. Until recently, rabbits featured largely in its diet. Since 1954, when myxomatosis first decimated the population, the numbers of rabbits in Britain have fluctuated. For the fox, it means they're sometimes in short supply, and in recent years other mammals, like voles and mice, have come to feature more extensively in its diet. A fox hunting voles uses a special technique. First, it listens for movement in the grass. Then it pounces with its forefeet on the spot where it thinks the vole is hidden. It may seem a lot of effort for one small vole, but the fox is certain there's one here. And it's right, as usual. But the fox will have to catch many more voles before it's had a meal equivalent to even a single rabbit. Not all foxes live and hunt in the countryside. In recent years, they've been colonizing built-up areas too. Nowadays, foxes are common in the suburbs and even in the centers of some of our biggest cities. These urban foxes have different habits too. In the concrete jungle of the city, the fox's normal prey species are at much lower density. But there's plenty of garbage, and that, together with rats and mice and food left out for our pets and birds, is what our urban foxes feed on. From hunters, they've turned into being primarily scavengers. The fox's breeding cycle begins soon after the new year. January is the fox's mating time. At night, the woods carry the sounds of the fox's courtship. Dog foxes range widely in their search for mates. They may travel several miles to find a female, and if two or more males are interested in the same vixen, they may fight for her favors. While the dog is in breeding condition for several months, the vixen is only in season for around 3 days. This vixen's thick-set build means she's probably an old animal, but the dog fox escorting her is clearly in the prime of life. Although foxes may live for 10 years, very few reach even half that age. Before mating, the pair need time to become acquainted. This dog seems a little nervous of his prospective mate, but he'll persist in following her until mating takes place. A country term for it is clicketing. After mating, the vixen will choose an earth in which to rear her cubs. Her pregnancy lasts between 7 and 8 weeks. Opinions vary over the role the dog fox plays in family life. It seems some males stay with their vixens until after the cubs are born, but many litters are raised apparently entirely by their mothers. By the end of February, the vixen has chosen the place where she'll give birth. It's in a disused quarry. For the sheep in the field, lambing time has already arrived. It's another situation which brings the fox into disrepute. Foxes frequently feed on the afterbirths of newborn lambs. They're attracted to the lambing flocks by the birth scents, but they're often blamed for killing lambs too. Certainly a fox will eat a dead lamb, and sometimes it will kill sickly ones, but they rarely attack strong, healthy lambs. Research has shown that most lambs eaten by foxes are either stillborn or have died from natural causes. But when a fox is found in a situation like this, it's easy to jump to the wrong conclusion. Every spring, many foxes are shot as lamb killers. In early March, the vixen gives birth. This one has made her home in an old rubbish dump. She's one of a growing number of foxes which breed in what we might regard as very untypical surroundings. Usually 4 or 5 cubs are born, but larger and smaller litters sometimes occur. There's no bedding in the breeding chamber. The cubs are simply born onto the hard-packed earth floor of the den, which is worn smooth by the vixen's body. Here the cubs are 5 days old. Their eyes are still tightly closed. While they're very small, the vixen stays with them, except for brief periods when she leaves to go hunting. If the dog is still with his family, he'll bring food to the entrance of the earth for his mate. Every so often, the vixen appears above ground to check that all is well. Down below, the cubs are growing fast. By the time they're a fortnight old, their eyes have opened and their fluffy brown coats have grown. Foxes breed successfully in urban surroundings as they do in the countryside. They make their dens in gardens, churchyards, under buildings, and on waste ground and railway embankments. When they begin to venture above ground, these cubs will be part of yet another generation of foxes, living side by side with man. It's late May, and out in the country, the vixen who chose the earth in the old quarry also has cubs. Where there's little disturbance, foxes can be found above ground at almost any hour of the day, but particularly in the morning and evening. The vixen takes advantage of the morning sun. And now her cubs have started to come above ground with her. They're nearly 6 weeks old. Their coats are now a rich reddish brown, but they still have a lot of growing to do before they start to acquire the sharp muzzles and long pointed ears of the adult animal. While they're still young, the cubs don't know the meaning of fear. When they're above ground, the vixen is usually somewhere close at hand. If she spots danger, she'll give a soft alarm call, which is a signal for the cubs to go below ground. But for the moment, there's nothing to interrupt their games. Suddenly, the vixen is on the alert. A second vixen has arrived. She's looking for food left lying around the earth. The cubs seem to know her, so she's probably a regular caller. She may even be a grown-up daughter of the resident vixen now living close by. And she's got what she came for. It's a chicken brought to the earth for the cubs to eat. Though the vixen may have killed it for herself, she's just as likely to have found it on a farm dump. No attempt is made to stop the visitor stealing it. She almost certainly has cubs of her own, and that's where she's taking her prize. After she's gone, the cubs resume their games. The vixen is totally relaxed, but every so often she shifts her position to get a better vantage point. She's more interested in scanning her surroundings than in playing with her cubs, but she's very patient with them. By the time the cubs are 7 weeks old, the vixen is starting to wean them. Their needle-sharp teeth are probably very painful. She continually outmaneuvers the cubs' attempts at suckling. Sometimes her patience runs out. By June, the quarry is almost hidden by the lush summer undergrowth. It's harder to see the foxes in the dense vegetation, but the family is still here. Now the cubs are 10 weeks old. Their ears and muzzles have begun to develop, and they're starting to look more like adults. The vixen is still with them, but now even less inclined to join in their boisterous games. Much of her time is spent trying to avoid being bowled over by the exuberant antics of her cubs. They're much more nimble on their feet now, spending hours engaged in mock battles with each other. It all helps to strengthen their muscles and quicken their reflexes, ready for the time when the family will break up and the cubs start to live independent lives. But for the present, they're still getting under their mother's feet. Though the cubs are now fully weaned, they haven't yet learned to hunt for themselves. The vixen will continue to provide food for the family for several weeks to come, though by now she's living apart from her growing family when they're underground. Something has caught her attention. The cubs are more alert now, and the vixen's rigid stare causes them to stop playing and follow their mother's gaze. In late June, the grass field in which the family is living is cut for hay. The foxes are more curious than frightened. From safe vantage points, the cubs watch the tractor's progress with interest. The vixen has probably seen it all before. Now the cubs' environment has changed. But there are lots of new smells for them to discover in the freshly cut grass. The family stays together until August. Then the cubs gradually begin to drift apart. They've already learned to fend for themselves. In the weeks to come, they'll move farther away from their birthplace to establish territories of their own in which to live and hunt. By late September, they're almost fully grown. But although independent, they've still got a lot to learn, and now the vixen isn't around to teach them. Traditionally, fox hunting takes place during the winter months. It starts in the autumn with cubbing meets. Unlike a full-scale hunt, cubbing is the equivalent to a training session. It gives the young foxhounds in their first season some experience of hunting. Equally important, the young foxes learn what it's all about too. The hounds hunt by following the trail of scent from the fox's footpads, which is left behind as it travels.
Spartacus and his slave army had fought their way